At this point, it's a cliche to say that music is a universal form of communication for our species. However, it doesn't make it any less true. This idea is what keeps us coming back to music not just as a form of entertainment, but as an art form, a medium to express ourselves, typically in a personal sense. In some ways, it serves as an outlet to express our feelings, whether they're good, bad, or something in between. Now, I could make this video about anything I want. It is a free country after all, and besides, I listen to a variety of music, from 70s disco to 80s and 90s J-pop. However, this is a unique opportunity for me to highlight a band that I have been listening to for many years that has a lot of talent behind it. You read the title, so you already know that I'm talking about the band Red Vox. Red Vox is an indie rock band based in Staten Island, New York City. Those of you watching that know Red Vox were most likely introduced to the band from their lead singer, songwriter, and guitarist, Vinny, or Vinesauce, as he is most commonly known. The rest of the band members are Joe, New Joe, Bill, Gerald, and Mike, who is currently inactive due to health problems. As a side note, no, there is no huge drama between Mike and the band, although I do like to think that Vinny said, "Mike's gone a bit funny," after Mike left. Getting back on track, I decided that for this video, I wanted to highlight some of my favorite Red Vox songs and go over my thoughts on what these songs mean to me personally. Take this video as an appreciation piece of sorts. In addition to that, I'll be offering my own interpretations as to what I think they mean. However, I'm not going to go over every single release. I just want to analyze some of my favorites and go over what I think they mean. As a result, this video will be heavily opinionated. However, I will try to be reasonable with my interpretations of each song I cover. Lastly, my interpretations are, of course, not necessarily going to be accurate to the artist's intention, and likewise, your own interpretations could be different as well. I implore you to leave a comment with your own thoughts on any of my theories. Lastly, I'm hoping this video sheds more light onto Red Vox as a band and introduces some new people to them because I love this band and it would make me so happy to see them reach more people. I've provided links to their website, Bandcamp, and Spotify in this video's description, as well as in the card you should see on the screen right now. In fact, I recommend you listen to their music first before coming to this video. It'll make the viewing experience a lot more fun. Oh, one more thing. At the end of the video, I plan to rank my favorite Red Vox songs and albums, so be sure to stick around for that. Alright, with all that out of the way, I invite you to join me on this journey, exploring the themes of heartbreak, self-doubt, depression, and everything else that I can't think of through the music of Red Vox. God, this video is already pretentious as shit. One thing I forgot to mention in the intro was that the comprehensive history of Red Vox as a band will not be covered in depth for this video either. This project became ambitious enough for me already, especially as my first venture into this style of video, so I will leave that for a future video. I will, however, be talking about each album in chronological order, mainly because it shows how their music has evolved and changed over the years. How much I cover in each album will depend mostly on my overall enjoyment of them. However, I do want to make it clear that I will not be covering each and every song in What Could Go Wrong. I'll just be going over the highlights. On that note, let's start with their debut album, What Could Go Wrong, released on March 29, 2016, my 17th birthday, funnily enough. What Could Go Wrong is, in my opinion, not the best Red Vox album, but a very strong start for the band. This should come as no surprise to anyone familiar with this landscape, as it is fundamental for any new band to put their best foot forward so that they can start finding an audience. At the same time, they are still figuring out what they want to do with their music, so their albums aren't always going to be the most cohesive. For what could go wrong, there is so much ambition and energy present in the music that brings an overall vibe of excitement. Songs such as The Wrong Side of History and In a Dream, or even Hazy, have catchy melodies and interesting lyrics that keep me coming back to them even 10 years after their release. It is also clear that the band is focused on making music that is deeply personal to them, yet in a weird way, relatable. And although the album as a whole feels a bit more like a compilation of their best work up to that point, I don't want that minor criticism to distract from the fact that this is a great first album for the band. On that note, let's start with one of my favorite songs on the album, Atom Bomb. Followed by There She Goes, it debuts Red Vox's approach to their musical style, whatever they want it to be, what would become a mainstay in their future releases. This isn't to say that their albums are all over the place, so to speak, but there's a nice variety present within each album that, to me, shows how much they enjoy making music together. Even more than that, though, they are not afraid to experiment a little bit, even within the confines of their genre. This is another topic that I will be covering in depth later on, so keep that in mind. Anyways, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, so let's talk about the lyrics. Other than the melody and overall style of this track, I love the message that this song communicates. Primarily, I think this song is about how the mass media tries to instill fear into its viewers, rather than simply inform them of important events. Further, in modern politics, it feels like many supporters of a politician blindly follow them without forming their own opinions. They just parrot the talking points of the person they follow. This and more is so stressful that at times we just want to explode. Which is why I believe this song is about the stress of living in this current landscape and the toll it takes on the individual. Another topic this song covers is that many people tend to view issues as black and white, with little to no nuance. You're either wrong when, or you're not a friend. There's no middle road. As a whole, this song does a great job portraying the feeling of being an atom bomb, feeling all these things piling up with no outlet to express them, paired with each crescendo in the music. Then, by the end of the song, after the music wells up, it just suddenly ends, and we are left with no resolution. The effect it has on the individual is unnecessary levels of stress and anxiety until it is all too much to deal with, leading to what one user on Genius speculates is a panic attack. Totally still not relevant to this day, right? Lastly, this song also provides a counter-argument to someone who might say, well, they get active in politics and change the system, or change the culture. I got an invitation to the renovation, but nothing gets done. In addition to being a lofty expectation to just put on the individual, there are, unfortunately, groups of people who are either not putting in any meaningful effort to challenge the status quo, or just not able to mobilize in an effective way. In this way, it feels like there really is no solution to this mess. In short, I love this song not just for the amazing guitar work and aggressive delivery of the lyrics, but because it represents exactly how I, and many other people in the United States, feel about modern politics. And even if you don't fully agree with the message, it's a great listen for the melody alone. Later on in the album, Atom Bomb's high energy is matched with The Wrong Side of History. This time, the song is about a romantic partner who is seemingly dishonest with our narrator. You say your mind is never shut. In this instance, this person seems to be a hypocrite, saying one thing while doing the opposite. They say that they are an open book, yet their actions don't align with what they are telling the narrator.
You've got a sentimental feeling, but you're under someone else's thumb.
This person is probably being influenced by somebody else, and thus isn't doing what is best for the relationship, but rather just blindly following the actions of some outside force, maybe a friend or family member. Further, they are trying to control the narrative by throwing away all the things they say. Even when they seem like they are trying to do better, they are putting on a facade. They only give lip service to the narrator and never actually put in any work to change. They just move on to the next charade, making the same mistakes over and over again. In this song, the narrator might also be trying to tell this person that if they don't change, they will inevitably hurt the next person they are with. Much like the previous track, this one not only has great lyrics, but a really catchy instrumental. To be quite honest with you, there are many Red Vox songs that I don't relate to that much. This song in particular might be one of them. However, the song is just such a good listen, and the lyrics do such a good job at articulating its message, that it doesn't matter all that much how closely I can relate to what is being said. I just have a deep appreciation for how they make music that communicates something that is clearly very personal to them. The energy present in the previous songs we covered calms down quite a bit by the time we reach Hazy, a song that I think is about living with depression and an overall lack of self-confidence.
So I got a little older, I got everything I thought I'd need. I got a little wiser, but I'm not everything I thought I'd be. You could be better off in bed, reliving the past inside your head.
Day by day, I feel myself relating more to this song. This year, I'm turning 27. And by the time this video releases, I may already be 27. 3 years away from being 30, and I'm having trouble shaking the feeling that I'm not doing everything that I could be doing, that I'm not living up to my full potential. At times, I fantasize about going back in time to make better decisions and do more with my life. A feeling that this song gets at in a very effective manner. At the time this album came out, the band members were all in their 30s, an age that I'm sure many people realize their youth is far behind them, and now that they are well into adulthood, they probably felt that they weren't meeting all the goals they set when they were younger. In this case, our narrator seems to be struggling with his art, most likely music. Even when he sits down to start writing a first draft, he feels it isn't good enough.
So I got another concept, I think it's my best idea in years. I guess I'll throw it all away, because I'm not good enough to.
I think this song also does a great job at showcasing the process of creating art and how soul-crushing it can be. You go through the process of feeling some semblance of confidence, you get to writing, and then you feel like it sucks and you just want to throw it all away. At times, we think that all the time we spent on our projects was worthless. These are feelings that are obviously not productive, but it's still hard to shake these feelings, especially when you're depressed.
Was it worth the time you spent? It was worth the time I spent.
But then things start getting better, and we suddenly say, yeah, this was all worth it. I can do this.
Now the voice is fucking dead.
The last song on the album that I wanted to go over is In a Dream. This song provides a nice conclusion to the album with a bittersweet kind of track. To me, this song is about our narrator reflecting on a past relationship, using the idea of dreams as a metaphor for the bliss he might have felt when in this relationship. Now, I am not sure what this verse might mean, but if we keep the dream metaphor in mind, then this moment of realization that he is holding out, maybe for the relationship to get better when it's already a lost cause, is when our narrator wakes up from the dream world this relationship is in. He, and possibly his partner too, realizes that the relationship is not working out, thus why they only meet each other in a dream. The end of the song supports this by reminding us that dreams do not last forever, and sometimes they end abruptly without a satisfying conclusion. We wake up and we want more, but we may never get more, so we get out of bed and move on with our lives. To cap off this section, I want to just talk about this album as a whole. Although, as stated at the beginning of this section, this isn't my favorite Red Vox album, I still find myself coming back to it because of how strong of a start it is for the band. The album's strengths are in its catchy melodies and high energy tracks. The writing does a great job at conveying the message of each track without relying too much on metaphors. Additionally, the writing in each song is very personal, which is a key component of what makes Red Vox's music so special to me. And the best part is, it only gets better from here. At the end of In a Dream, we get a taste of what is to come. Just over a year later, Red Vox released their second album, Another Light, in December of 2017. Alongside its release, the band members also live-streamed the premiere of the album, what would become a tradition for the band in the coming years. In the Q&A section of the stream, Vinny mentioned that the album had, quote, a bit of a narrative, unquote, which, in my opinion, made the album feel more like a story than just a compilation of songs that fit an overall vibe. This album has got to be one of my favorites. I can tell there was so much love poured into it by the band members. Each song flows so nicely that the album just flies by, even when considering the heavy subject matter within. Red Vox did an amazing job making this album tell a story, or at least giving each song consistent and cohesive narrative threads. A story of hardship and heartbreak, sadness and solitude, and one more alliteration that I can't think of. It starts off strong with Another Light, a song that I believe is about having to keep moving forward with life, despite how bleak it may seem. Even when I am optimistic about my future, I always have that lingering doubt in the back of my mind, that what if this goes horribly wrong line that echoes from afar, even when I feel I am miles away from that possibility. However, I cannot let myself get stuck on that line of thinking. If I am to get better, I must keep moving forward, because the world won't wait for me to catch up.
The future's brighter than you'll ever know. If you ever frame your mind and see it all in another life.
I think this is my favorite part of the song, because it really speaks to me and my outlook on life. In many cases, the one roadblock in a tough situation is simply adopting a new perspective. This isn't to say that having worry or doubts about your future isn't something we should feel. In fact, it is an important part of processing our day-to-day lives. But we have to keep going if we want to truly be happy. Further, we should approach new situations with an open mind so that we can see every angle. That nice car that seems like a great deal might have some serious damage on the other side. Oppositely, that mountain that seems like it never ends eventually has a peak with gorgeous views. Perspective is key. We then segue into track 2, which is Settle for Less, a song that explores one's ideas of success and how it relates to their art.
Late last night, or was it morning? Outside the rain was pouring. I stumbled out, I hit the ground.
On some of our darkest days, it feels like things start going wrong the moment we walk outside. We all have our bad days, but it doesn't change the fact that they make us feel like shit, for lack of a better term.
Was told at the time to just keep going. You'll fly, but don't stop rolling. Reach for the moon and hit the ground.
When others try to help us by telling us words of motivation, it doesn't always have an effect. We still end up failing, especially when setting our expectations so high. At this point, I'm realizing that what our narrator is being told isn't exactly directing him to set his expectations so high. In fact, they said he would fly so long as he kept rowing. Our narrator might have expectations for his art that are unrealistically high, setting himself up for failure right from the start, while these other voices are trying to keep him in reality.
Is this a chip upon my shoulder? As heavy as a boulder. When all the world owes you a crown.
And to add insult to injury, it feels like the world refuses to recognize your efforts and puts additional stress on us at that.
Just a reflection on my emptiness. You don't succeed by chasing success.
At this point, it seems like our narrator is finally recognizing where he is going wrong. If he always chases his arbitrary measure of success, or even just wanting everything he produces to be popular and loved by many, he will never be happy. An important piece here is that we really don't know what he means by the word success. Does he really want it to get popular, or does success mean something else to him that he's ultimately not getting? We don't know this, and I think this is intentional. Doesn't matter what he means by success because it is what he makes of it at the end of the day. Also, if he just makes this art appeal to the masses, then the quote-unquote success that follows will feel hollow. It no longer means anything to him. As he said in Another Light, don't give in to cheap imitation.
Just a reflection on my happiness. Only compete with yourself at your best. A separation from the self I possess. Just let it be and settle for less.
Here, I think this last line is an acceptance that his art is personal, and that's what makes him happy. And in my opinion, what makes it special. Which is why it's in the same verse as just a reflection on my happiness. Here, settling for less doesn't mean that he's giving up or letting his art be mediocre. It means that he is setting reasonable expectations for his art's success. It may not be popular, and it may not be perfect, but it says what he wants it to say, and that's the true measure of success he needs to have. To close off this section, it is important to always recognize that your art is, well, yours. Nobody can take that away from you. Even if others think it's weird or that it just isn't their cup of tea, if it is what you want it to be, then it is good enough. Other people enjoying it and connecting with it will come forth if it is genuine. Memories Lie switches up the subject matter a little bit, this time focusing on the idea of memories, shocker, and how we use them to shape our perception of the world we live in.
Past the living moon, a rose-tinted tomb, and a ghost staring back at me.
Many times, we cherish nostalgic moments in our life. We tend to either forget or ignore the pain we experienced in these moments of time. When we start to dig into these memories with a different perspective, we begin to see the ghost in the rose-tinted tomb.
If it seems impossible, it's because you
Some people choose to ignore this fact, thinking it is somehow impossible that their own lived experiences cannot be trusted. However, if the event is especially traumatic, we tend to repress those memories.
When it's too uncomfortable, you can rewrite history.
Further, if we choose to ignore these painful memories, it can paint an inaccurate picture of events, which could be dangerous, especially if used in a malicious way. It can be easier to push those memories away or change details in our heads to suit a more favorable narrative. Alternatively, it can be used to avoid the difficult process of learning from past mistakes and growing as a person. In a clever callback to Another Light, our narrator provides a satisfying conclusion to the song while using light and perspective as metaphors for approaching life with an open mind. More specifically, we need to shed light on those painful memories and find the truth hiding within. Allowing our memories to lie to us may feel good in the moment, but processing them the way they truly happened will allow us to move on and be happy. Tell Me is up next, and I really like this song.
Wow, great commentary.
I don't have too much to say about this one other than it's a great song with a catchy tune and some more really interesting lyrics.
I've been watching, I've been waiting, I've been ready. Won't you tell me? Maybe I've been watching, I've been waiting, I've been patient. Won't you tell me? Maybe tell me.
I think this song is about the narrator wanting some guidance, maybe someone to tell him all the answers so that he doesn't feel so lost. Written like a cry for help, he is seemingly in a very dark place and cannot find the exit.
I've been trying, but my hands are tied. Am I running out of road? Am I a victim of my own design? And I can't help wondering if I'm running out of time.
I don't have much else to say about this song, as it does not leave up much to the imagination, so I'm going to move forward with the next two songs. Let me know in the comments if you think there's more going on here than meets the eye. I'm So Happy and I'm So Sad have, in my opinion, the coolest narrative threads tying them together. Beginning with I'm So Happy, we seem to be starting off with our narrator being, well, happy for someone else's achievements.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you. If you're happy, then I guess I'm happy for you. It's alright. It's not real. You're doing fine. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I knew something felt off. The first section almost feels sarcastic or passive-aggressive and not at all sincere. Then, our narrator inevitably says the quiet part out loud. It's all a lie. I think this song is about the jealousy one feels when someone they broke up with seems to be doing so well, which in hindsight is an obvious conclusion to draw from this song. I do, however, think it does a lot with this concept, even if the lyrics do seem to be more or less cut and dry.
Cause you got everything you want, but I'll overdo.
More than that, though, our narrator wants things to go well for him. He feels like he is, quote-unquote, overdue for luck to be in his favor, yet that doesn't seem to be happening. It seems like all the good luck is being funneled into the life of this person that he's singing about. By the end of the song, he admits defeat.
Cause I'm not happy for you. I tried, but I never came through.
Moving on to I'm So Sad, we see the opposite end of the spectrum, where a narrator gives in to his jealousy and resentment for this person.
I'm so sad 'cause I never ever really had the right to be. And I'm so sad 'cause I never wanna know just what you think of me. And I'm so sad 'cause the way to lift myself up is to see you fall.
In this sense, our narrator is maybe being more honest with himself about how he feels. Yet, this isn't a healthy approach to the situation either. Instead of ignoring his feelings and pretending to be happy, he's taking out his anger on this other person. Being in control is another important aspect here. Although I am still not sure what this could mean in the context of the song, it seems to me he's either not in control of his emotions, thus taking it out on others by controlling every aspect of the relationship he can, or he's trying to be in control of his emotions yet doesn't have the healthy mechanisms to do so. Controlling the narrative of the situation could be another aspect of this. This person's memories lie, so why not use it to push all the blame on someone else? It feels good to make it someone else's fault when you are equally, or in some cases solely, responsible. Alternatively, this could be interpreted as just being jealous of someone else's success, not necessarily an ex-lover. Personally, I'm leaning more towards the relationship side of things. Lastly, before we move on, I do want to highlight this line in the song. It reminds us that this is something that many people are guilty of. It obviously doesn't paint the speaker in the best light to admit all this stuff to us. However, it is important to keep in mind that he is a person. People make mistakes, and an important part of growing as a person starts with recognizing where you went wrong. Plus, the song isn't being too charitable with our narrator either, with lyrics like, needless to say, our narrator does at least regret acting like this. Memento Mori is next, which features more themes of memory, as well as a feeling of one's mortality. This also ties into Memories Lie, mainly with the themes of memory. However, it is put in a different context, with our speaker pondering if we only exist because of other people's memories of us. To put it another way, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Considering the title, which is, according to Wikipedia, Latin for remember that you have to die, the context must be pondering about one's legacy after they die. Once again, considering the ages of the members of Red Vox, even at the time of this album's release, it makes sense that they would have thoughts of their own mortality. Hell, I do, and I'm still relatively young. Inevitably, we will be forgotten due to the sands of time. How long that takes depends on numerous factors, including, but not limited to, if we produce some kind of significant art, or even just having a family that honors our legacy. We cannot, however, control if this does or does not happen because, well, to be frank, we're 6 feet under at that point. Eventually, we will be forgotten. Track 8 is From the Stars, one such example of Red Vox's use of metaphors without leaning too far into cliches.
Your star is bright and glowing. You had so much to show me.
To begin, we have what appears to be a message of appreciation to someone, saying that their star is bright. To me, this star is a metaphor for someone's personality. Possibly someone who means so much to the speaker that they brighten up the room whenever they are near.
The less you say, the more you show, you show, you show, you show, you show. The less you show, the more you disappear. A part of you is all we know, we know, we know, we know, we know. A part of you is in the atmosphere.
But this person seems to have something going on with them. Maybe they are being distant with their narrator, and he wants them to know that he notices this. Whatever it may be, this person isn't sharing something with the narrator. Perhaps something very important to the relationship. Now, this is mostly speculation, but I think this song could be about a romantic partner, or maybe just some other loved one, that was very distant with the narrator. In short, this song is likely our speaker's way of extending out a helping hand to this person. He wants them to know that they are not alone here, and that he is here to help, so long as they talk to him. To reinforce this, he repeats the lines, "You got a message from the stars," and "You got a message through the stratosphere." This person is so distant that it feels like sending this message to them is like broadcasting a signal into outer space.
Felt like an ocean from the one. You turn the lights on and it disappears.
Assuming my very speculative interpretation holds true, these lines might signify our narrator reaching out to this person by opening up that conversation with them, or turning the lights on. Yet, this person, for one reason or another, does not share anything with the speaker. He is still left in the dark about what is going on. This verse of the song is my favorite, specifically for the aggressive delivery of what seems to be our narrator pleading to this person. At this point, he is desperate just to get to talk to this person about what's going on. Thus, he keeps sending his message through the stratosphere in the hopes that it reaches them. Up next, we have Rub Your Eyes. This is another song with a great instrumental, mainly in how it harmonizes the piano with the electric guitar. Plus, I'm just a sucker for that classic piano sound.
I keep it together, but you fuck me up.
Aside from that, I, once again, don't have that much to say about this one, but I still felt it was important to mention. Track 10 is titled Reno, which was most likely named after the city of Reno, Nevada. Much like its more popular cousin, Las Vegas, Reno is a tourist destination known for its casino gambling. Keep this in mind as we go over this song.
A little bit of fun never hurt no one. Now I need shelter from the raging desert sun. Escaping into vice in the city in the sand. What I threw away is right back in my hand.
Honestly, I love how he uses a literal crawl towards the city of Reno as a metaphor for crawling back to our vices to cope with a difficult time in our lives. In this case, I think this song could be interpreted as someone who misses a toxic relationship coming crawling back to the same person, although addictive substances or activities are honestly a valid angle to view this track as well.
I'm heading on back to Reno. Heading on back to Reno.
He specifically says that he is heading back to Reno, meaning that he has been down this path before and does not plan on stopping now, further reinforced by the line in the previous verse, "But what I threw away is right back in my hand." Now, here's where another one of my crackpot theories comes in. Bear with me here because this makes a lot of assumptions without much evidence. Anyways, The specific location might symbolize going from one addiction or obsession to another. He might be avoiding Las Vegas due to a gambling addiction he developed there. So, he thinks that Reno might be different. Going with the addiction angle, someone who's trying to stop might end up replacing it with something else. Think about how many people you know quit smoking only to start vaping. On the other hand, going with the relationship angle, it is still similar. Replace that relationship with someone else to try and relive the good memories you had. Those same problems are still present, whether you're in Las Vegas or Reno. Now, again, this relies heavily on pure speculation and assumptions, so I'm not solid on this aspect of my interpretation. Take this with a grain of salt.
Desert's gone cold in the darker night. Look into the distance, I can see a bit of light. Is it light?
Towards the end, we have a connection to the album's name, as well as a beacon of hope. Perhaps good times are ahead of us, even in this dark part of the journey. Therefore, we keep moving forward. Or maybe it's just an illusion. Okay, that sounds dumb, but considering the rest of the song, I seriously think this quote-unquote light might be an illusion. An illusion that this new person, or addiction, is better than the last, when, in reality, we are just heading back to the city in the sand. The 11th track on this album is In the Garden, which seems to be one of the band's more popular tracks, if the view count on their YouTube upload of the song is any indication. And honestly, it is well deserved. In addition to its fantastic instrumental, this song has some of the most creative writing on the whole album. What makes this track stand out from the rest are the prominence of metaphors to tell the story. Similar to From the Stars, this track provides a refreshing departure from the more cut and dry writing of the other songs on this album.
Made myself a little garden to grow myself my only friends. Got myself a brand new start and oh no, I screwed it up again.
To me, this verse symbolizes his desire to turn over a new leaf and foster personal growth. This facade, however, is very flimsily held up, and he almost immediately admits that it isn't working.
I'm to blame for this. I hide away until the day is through. I will pay for this. We'll find a way to push the blame on you. I won't run from this. Hide away until the day is through.
He knows that he is ultimately responsible for his faults, however, he wants to avoid responsibility for them. To me, this makes sense within the context of a relationship. Perhaps his partner is bringing up these issues, but he tries to spin the narrative around to make him look innocent. This aspect of the song ties in nicely with Memories Lie. In that song, we are given a lesson in how someone's memory of a situation can be weaponized to suit a specific narrative. This time, however, our narrator is aware that he's being dishonest as a means to avoid these uncomfortable aspects of himself. Again, memories can lie when they're too painful. Now you need it just to feel alright. Another tie-in, one that I honestly think is a bit more fitting, is the previous song, Reno, in which our narrator falls back on his old ways. What I threw away is right back in my hand. If you don't put in the effort to kill your bad habits, you will fall back on them. At this point in the song, the narrator is beginning to see the fruits of his labor, and it's not good. Rather than fostering positive and meaningful growth in his quote-unquote friends, which I believe are a metaphor for his own personality traits, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, he has just cultivated a plot of weeds. To me, this is another way in which this ties into Reno, mainly because I think our narrator knows how to grow a proper garden. The problem is, he doesn't seem to want to put in the necessary amount of effort to keep the weeds from sprouting.
It's so simple. It's as easy as it can be. Make a monster. Lock it up, throw away
At this point, the weeds are no longer a nuisance in the speaker's garden. They have become a monster. Although he tries to keep this monster hidden away, it is always there, waiting to break free. In fact, I think this monster was always there, however the narrator just finds ways to hide it. Unfortunately, this monster is taking root in the property, and thus cannot be contained any longer.
There's a monster taking root in the property in the garden where the weeds are now growing free in the garden where my friends fought to bury me. There's a jungle. It's as far as the eye can see. Overgrown now. It's no longer a fantasy, but it's too late. By the time that I realize I can't see now, 'cause the dirt is into my eyes.
By this point, I think we're ready to talk about the narrator's friends, which I believe could either be taken literally or as a metaphor for something. Spoiler alert, it's probably a metaphor for something. If we take this literally, it makes sense. His friends have realized that he was hiding a monster and are now confronting him about this, at which point he is literally in too deep. Now it's too late for him to save these friendships and to maintain his lies. Taken metaphorically, these friends could be a metaphor for his bad behaviors. I personally think that the friends are these weeds that he ended up growing in his garden, or the bad traits that he ended up cultivating, rather than putting in the work to keep these weeds out. Now that these weeds are overgrown, he cannot run from these problems anymore. His issues, mostly arrogance and avoidance tactics, as we saw earlier in the song, are now piling up so high that they are burying him. And by the time he's realized this, it's too late. The dirt is up to his eyes, and he is forced to face the music. With the climax of In the Garden fresh in our minds, the album starts to slow down a bit with Forgive and Forget and Burn a Picture, to help cap off the story with a satisfying, yet somber, conclusion. Now, I don't have too much to say about Forgive and Forget. I just have a few notes about how it ties into the story, which is why I lumped it together with Burn a Picture. Forgive and Forget, as the title suggests, is a song about forgiveness, mostly summarizing the common themes of this album, followed by the phrase forgive and forget.
If you can't get up off the cold hard floor, you gotta learn to forgive and forget.
What I think is most notable about this track is the last line.
And if there's no hope left of another star, you gotta learn to forgive yourself.
This tells me that the song isn't completely about the narrator forgiving others, but also about forgiving himself for his personal failings, an important takeaway from this album as a whole. Part of moving on from traumatic events, especially those where you were ultimately in the wrong, or at least partially, is learning to forgive yourself. This isn't to say that you are telling yourself what you did was okay, rather, it means being at peace with your past and recognizing that you can make your future better. To relate it to In the Garden, you can plant another garden, this time with flowers, and work harder to maintain it to keep any weed monsters from taking root again. Finally, we have arrived at Burn a Picture.
You could throw your conscience away just to land a good part in the play. Maybe there's a reason that you feel so empty. If you burn a picture to obtain the ashes, a bit of wind could blow what's left away.
Here, our narrator is circling back to the second track, Settle for Less, once again reiterating the point that art needs to mean something to you, or at least be your own. If you instead focus on being successful, you will give up your sense of self. You don't succeed by chasing success. Now, I originally struggled to interpret anything else in this song while this video was being made. However, After having looked at what others were saying about it on Genie's lyrics, I realized I was on the right track. 2 people pointed out that this song could also relate to different approaches in life, specifically life as it's portrayed in Memories Lie. Everyone you see passing on the street plays a part in a tragedy. The speaker here is suggesting that one path of life is abandoning your sense of self to be successful. Another person, in reference to the line that begins with "if you burn a picture," said this: "This can be interpreted in 2 ways. If you destroy or exploit good memories in relationships just to obtain something material, in the end you will be left with nothing. Dissecting your art too thoroughly, trying to figure out what made it good, is pointless and only risks killing your interest in the subject." Both ideas that I probably had inklings of, however, these people had them much more fleshed out and clearly written, so I wanted to give them credit for having done the heavy lifting here. Moving on to the end of the song, we hear our narrator repeating the phrase, "There's another light," a clever callback to the first song as a way to tie the whole album together. Further, I think it tells us that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So long as we keep moving forward, we will reach greener pastures. We just need to keep walking. At this point, we're finally ready to start summarizing this album as a whole to construct its overall narrative. To me, this album tells a story of the speaker's journey through his mental health struggles, specifically as they relate to relationships, his art, and his overall outlook on life. The album starts with songs that feel more like someone sharing his wisdom about his approaches to life. In Another Light, he teaches us to approach situations with an open mind, and that life isn't all bleak if we just learn to change our perspective. Settle for Less teaches a listener to be true to themselves, and don't just use success as a measure of how good something they produce is. Make your art what it needs to be, or just what you want it to be, not what you think it should be in the eyes of others. Lastly, Memories Lie cautions us to the downsides of only trusting your memories and how they may not fully represent the truth. In the latter portion of the album, we see this approach expanded upon with cautionary tales from the speaker's point of view. In this way, I don't think that the album itself is one continuous story from start to finish, rather a collection of stories used to illustrate the common themes present in the album. For example, In the Garden represents personal growth and how one can try to mimic positive growth by pushing away their bad habits and toxic traits instead of destroying them. We see an example of these toxic traits in I'm So Sad, where he feeds into his jealousy and resentment of someone to try and make himself feel better. This satisfaction is short-lived, however, because ultimately he will only want more. The monster inside him will continue to take root in the property. Additionally, in I'm So Happy, he tries to gaslight himself into thinking he is happy for this person. Again, ignoring the pain he feels to try and put forth the facade of having moved on from them. In reality, he hasn't moved on, and really he needs some help, but he doesn't seem to be getting any. Either he doesn't know how to ask for help, be it from a therapist or a close friend or family member, or he's actively avoiding help because he is afraid of being told what he doesn't want to hear. The first and final tracks, Another Light and Burn a Picture, respectively, take the more general route again in the form of lessons being taught to us by the narrator. In Burn a Picture, the lesson being learned is that looking for some kind of personal gain, either from a relationship or from art, will end up destroying your soul, making you a shell of your former, more true self. Or in the very least, it's going to keep you from enjoying that activity. And then going back to Another Light, we are taught a different lesson, that being to approach situations with an open mind. More than that, though, he wants us, the listeners, to learn from his mistakes and try to see another person's point of view when presented with any problem or conflict. Art, specifically the creation of, is an obvious example here. Maybe that song you made wasn't bad just because it didn't get as popular as you hoped it would. Viewing it from the perspective of why it was made changes its criteria of success. Was it a personal piece made to express some complicated feelings you had? Or was it something that you had a lot of fun creating? When it's put that way, the song's success is only measured by how the song turned out in the eyes of the creator, or creators. Again, you won't succeed by chasing success. If your art means something to you or accomplish the goals you set for it, the success will follow. And if it doesn't, it's not too late to try again or make revisions. Next, in From the Stars, we learn about what can happen when someone is distant in a relationship, communicated through the metaphor of broadcasting signals into space. Here, the perspective changes. This isn't a story about the speaker himself. Instead, it is told as a message to some other person from the speaker's point of view. My interpretation is that the speaker's ex-partner is who the song was directed towards. That would imply that this song is a representation of how the speaker felt to constantly be reaching out to help, or at least talk about what's going on, and being met with silence. If nothing else, it is a frustrating experience, and a painful one at that. As many of us who have been in some kind of relationship before, be it romantic or platonic, have undoubtedly learned, communication is key. Us humans are complicated sacks of meat with chemicals that make our emotions and preferences do crazy stuff, for lack of a better word, or words? Anyways, it's important to communicate these complicated emotions to one another, just so we know how to keep the relationship from being toxic or problematic. Speaking from my own experience, I had been in a relationship where my partner was very apprehensive about her feelings, often keeping issues hidden away rather than talking about them with me. And additionally, I was not great at this either. I too ignored problems in the relationship, hoping that they would just go away. Contrast this with another past relationship I had. We were very honest with each other, always being forthcoming with anything that bothered us. Ultimately, it still didn't work out, but that is also because, again, we were forthcoming with each other about falling out of love, which ended up being a mutual feeling, funnily enough. To this day, we're still great friends because that's just how things evolved. On the opposite side of the coin, the former person I talked about, the apprehensive one, and I, although we reconnected and are on generally good terms, we're still not friends, and we definitely will not get back together. Mainly because our breakup was messy. Again, due to the lack of communication from both sides. From the Stars does a great job portraying this, while also keeping things interesting by using space as an allegory. For this reason, it is one of my favorites on this album. Where that leaves us is that when we are in dark times, we need to remember that others have lived those experiences before. Thus, it's important to look out for one another and open up to those you trust about your feelings. Additionally, we should learn from others' mistakes and approach situations from different angles to better understand what to take away from it. Lastly, your art's success should not be measured by how popular it is or what somebody else wants it to be, rather by how well it accomplishes what it needs to, in your view. With all that being said, I think Another Light is a great Red Vox album because of its strong songwriting and overall more cohesive nature of its songs. What Could Go Wrong is still a good first album, however, I feel that it does fall a bit short in this aspect, that being that the songs just don't go together quite as well in a narrative sense. This isn't to say that Another Light is perfect, because it still has some areas to improve upon. Rather, I think that this album showed how far Red Vox had come, even just a year later. I can tell that this album was produced out of the band's pure love for music and a greater understanding of how to tap into their potential. And thankfully, they seem to keep that trend going, as we will hear in the following releases. Well, that section was not only lengthy, but it was a lot in terms of subject matter. How well Red Vox communicates the messages of their songs cannot be overstated. It is honestly getting difficult to put into words how much I adore their fantastic writing and composition of each track. That being said, this section will take a break from the more serious subject matter to briefly talk about one of their less serious works, so to speak, as well as a couple singles. Heads up, this section will have some crazy tonal whiplash, so just be prepared for that. Lastly, as mentioned in the beginning of this video, there is frequent profanity and dark themes present, And this is especially true in this specific section, particularly on the vulgar end of things. So feel free to skip over this section if that isn't what you're here for. With that out of the way, let's start off bold with Red Vox's first quote-unquote joke album, as I'll be calling it, Blood Bagel, which was released in 2016 between What Could Go Wrong and Another Light. To set the scene, we can look no further than Red Vox's Bandcamp page for this album. For our next album, we wanted to strive for more depth and experimentation. This is not that album. This is Blood Bagel. Fuck you. If that isn't descriptive enough, we can look at the first track titled Vomit in the Ball Pit. Vinny, the band's lead vocalist, stated that this song was based on a real childhood event.
Vinny, question, is vomit in the ball pit a sexual thing? Because I won enjoying the idea of some drunk guy in the tumbler ball pit throwing up. It is about something I saw in real life when I was a kid at Chuck E. Cheese. I was not allowed to go in ball pits, and I was really, really upset at them. I was at a kid's birthday party, and I was probably about 7 or 8, and I was like mad at my parents, and I walked by the ball pit and everyone was having fun, and then I noticed a stench. I'll never forget the stench. It smelled like clown puke. Basically, I heard people go, "Ah!" and I saw that someone had puked in the ball pit.
This is of course embellished for comedic effect in the song, equating it to a serious traumatic event he experienced as a child. Now, I wanted to bring this one up not because it has some crazy narrative or any shit like that. Simply put, it seemed like Red Vox had a ton of fun making this, judging by the behind-the-scenes clips shown in Behind the Bagel. Just for fun, I wanted to share this comment I found on that video, which theorizes that this album does have a bit of a narrative going on with it. Okay, so the whole story behind this album is magnificently simple. A grown-up man faces his fear from the mental trauma he got in his childhood, but gets roids in the process. Being weakened from it, he can't satisfy his nymphomaniac woman, and goes on the date where he shits his pants and again gets captured by the Vietnamese. In the end, he reunites with his ex in a pleasurable sexual act. Beautiful story, put into beautiful songs. Couldn't have said it better myself. By the way, if you want context for all that, go listen to the album. It's honestly hilarious and overall real fun to listen to. In the end, this album shows that Red Vox doesn't take themselves too seriously, in addition to just having fun when they feel like it. It speaks to the overall dynamic of the band members, that being that they are just some friends who make music together. This is another aspect of Red Vox that makes their music special to me, not just because they aren't pretentious or anything like that, but because their songs are done for pure love of the game. Even if it isn't about something serious or deeply personal, still has that Red Vox level of polish on it that makes it fun to listen to. Oh, also, Varg Skeletor, one of Vinny's friends and fellow streamers, made a metal cover of the song, which is neat. Okay, here's some more tonal whiplash, although I ordered each song in such a way that it softens the blow a little bit. Our next song is Trolls and Goblins. According to the Red Vox Bandcamp page, Vinny wrote it in about 2005, and it's been sitting dormant for a long time. It was then released as an incentive of their 2015 charity stream. For context, Vinesauce used to do a charity streaming event every summer called Vinesauce is Hope. To encourage and, in a way, gamify donations to keep coming in, they would set incentives for each fundraiser amount. These ranged from members of Vinesauce playing a certain game to, as is the case here, Vinny recording and releasing a song that he'd been sitting on for a while. With that context out of the way, let's take a listen to Trolls and Goblins.
In the forest past the harvest, tipped a troll named Drizzle Drozzle Dum.
This is another fun little song that, although technically it was written before the formation of Red Vox, however, it was performed by the band's members, so it counts, is another great example of the band just having fun. This song is pretty straightforward, a song about a troll named Drizzle Drozzle Dum, who learns the hard way not to steal a goblin's lunch. Moving forward, we return to the more serious stuff with Stranded. The context of the song is, again, written on its Bandcamp page, which reads, "This is a song written during the Another Light sessions and recorded after the completion of the album for the vinyl." I actually have the vinyl for Another Light, and I'm very happy that it contains Stranded on disc 2. Not to spoil my section at the end of the video, that being ranking my favorite Red Vox albums, but this song has got to be one of my favorites. The electric guitar and synth are all top-notch, thanks to Joe and Vinny respectively.
Lost to the void, all sense of time.
And what rock song is complete without a kick-ass guitar solo? Alongside these are awesome lyrics that tell a story of someone stranded in outer space. Now, before I get to my analysis, I do want to be clear that I'm still on the fence about my interpretation of the song. Therefore, I'm presenting it as more of a framework rather than a fully fleshed out theory. This is another great opportunity for you, the viewer, to bring your unique perspective to the table as to what you think this song could mean, or at least what it means to you.
Alone and stranded out of time. Are you receiving me alright? Out in the cold October night. Why are you leaving me behind?
I personally interpreted this song as an allegory for the loneliness one may have felt when they were seriously depressed, either from a breakup or some kind of setback, similar to how one would have felt if they were marooned on a distant planet. One commenter on the Bandcamp page for this song said something that could provide some evidence towards this claim. "I feel myself as a lonely and forgotten spaceman, floating with no tether. I can't ever go back, and now the stars are my only company, but even still, trying to desperately call out for anyone." At this point, I am, again, still on the fence about this, but I feel that I may be on the right track, particularly with the themes of loneliness. I still strongly feel that the song is about the narrator having to navigate a particularly difficult stage of his life alone.
The air I breathe is running dry. Don't think I'll last another night.
In this way, the song is literally and figuratively about our narrator calling out into the void of space in the hopes that someone hears him, someone who cares and is willing to help. At this point, he is seriously struggling to keep going about this alone and needs someone else to guide him. This song could then be interpreted as our speaker fighting this loneliness and wanting to reach out to others. However, the chorus offers a different perspective. To me, this could mean that our narrator is ignoring any help that may be coming his way, whatever it may be. At the very least, he does not have someone who can relate to him. Also, the "I'll believe it when I die" part is confusing me a bit as to how I want to interpret it. At this point in time, I think it might be in reference to someone who might say, "I understand," or "I feel for you," when trying to help him. Otherwise, I do think my initial interpretation holds at least some weight to it, given the setting and overall choice of words. I'm thinking that the chorus ties into this in the sense that the speaker is pushing others away, thus why he cannot hear them if they're calling out his name. Further, this lyric provides some more evidence to my interpretation.
If I had just one more day, I would speak my mind goodbye forever. All I have to say, and I'd mean all that I'd say.
This suggests that our narrator realizes that it is too late for him to find those who may have tried to send a message to him, yet it was not received. He wishes he had just one more day to say what he needed to say. That was in the past, however, and there is nothing he can do to change that, because he and all the other people that the song is directed at are a million miles away. Alternatively, it could be interpreted as him leaving behind an earlier stage of life. Perhaps these people that he cannot hear, due to being a million miles away, are ones that he needs to distance himself from. In this way, it makes sense why he is navigating this universe alone. He had to, in order to break away from the who's and whys that used to matter. My only problem with this interpretation is when the narrator says, "Why are you leaving me behind?" earlier in the song. Was he really escaping this part of his life, or was he abandoned by those people? I'm hoping that at some point I, or somebody watching this video, can develop a more solid theory. Of course, it would be foolish of him to think that he is alone in this journey. Eventually, he will encounter someone who understands his plight and is willing to help. Therefore, it is not too late for him to change the course of his future. Before I end this section, I do want to address the elephant in the room. That being the discography listed on Red Vox's Bandcamp page, showing more works released before What Could Go Wrong. This is because originally this was Vinny's page for his own personal works. These works are beyond the scope of this video, however, they are interesting in their own regards, and may have another appearance on my channel, if enough people are interested. Otherwise, I'm going to skip over them so we can continue on with Red Vox's works. Before we continue, let's take a breather and just recap what we've covered so far. Starting with Red Vox's first album, What Could Go Wrong, I think this is a strong start for the band, with catchy tunes and some pretty creative writing to go along with them. Being their first album, it is a little rough in terms of its cohesiveness and overall composition. However, I still come back to some songs on this album because they are pretty dang solid. Next, we looked at Another Light, which took the lessons learned from What Could Go Wrong and made an album that not only told a bit of story, but also showed significant growth in terms of the band's songwriting. In what was mostly out of left field, Red Vox decided to have a little fun with Blood Bagel, being focused on a more comedic tone while having a commendable amount of polish. This is especially impressive when you consider this came out before Another Light, which showed that the band was making steady improvements to their craft soon after the release of their first album. Lastly, Stranded, as Vinny stated over on the Vinesauce subreddit, kind of caps off an era or sound of Red Vox for now. It's the culmination of everything they learned from Another Light and is directly related to that album. This makes sense, considering the themes of space, tying it to From the Stars, as well as the feelings of loneliness and hopelessness that were also present in various songs in Another Light. As we will see, Vinny was correct in that this was an inflection point for the band's overall artistic direction. Their subsequent album after Another Light was the start of this shift, and Red Vox continues to experiment to this day with each album's release. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. Let's start digging into what is Red Vox's third album, named Kerosene.
Have I been facing the wrong way, baby? I gotta turn it around.
In summary, Kerosene was indicative of a new era for Red Vox. Now, I want to say right out of the gate that this is one album that I tend to overlook. Due to its more experimental nature, I find that there are, overall, less songs on it that I like than, say, Another Light, for example. It is, however, an important album, and thus it deserves at least some attention for this video. Further, my preferences are just that, my own personal preferences for what I enjoy. Obviously, do not take my opinions about this album as objective fact, but as a frame of reference for what I tend to enjoy about the band's music. Similar to What Could Go Wrong, I am not going to cover every single song. I am instead going to focus on my favorite tracks from this album before going a little more in depth as to why I think this is an important release. Alright, let's go for a drive down Kerosene Ave.
What the fuck is Realign about?
Our first stop is Heavy Little Heart, a song that, like many other tracks on this album, makes heavier use of an acoustic guitar for the lead instrument. Further, the lyrics seem to be of greater importance in terms of the songwriting, although it isn't as noticeable in this track as it is in others.
When the people that believe you grow tired of the silence and the fear that wants to see you is hiding round the bend.
Overall, this is a nice song about having to not only face your fears and self-doubt head-on, but also working up the courage to reach out to loved ones. I otherwise don't have too much more to say about this song, so let's get back in the car and keep driving. Just a few minutes later, we will make another stop at Hungry Ghost. This time we are warned about what can happen if we abandon all morals to get to the top.
At the top there's only one way down. There's one way down. There's one way down. At the top you got a bigger mouth to feed.
A tale as old as time. When you're at the top, the only way to go is down. This also reminds us that there is a bigger mouth to feed. When people are corrupt enough to abandon all morals to get ahead, they will inevitably keep wanting more. More power, more fame, more wealth, more of anything. Thus, they will never be satisfied, even if they have it all. The song's title, Hungry Ghost, has heavy implications as to what this corrupt line of thinking does to a person. We already know that hungry represents their hunger to keep getting more. The ghost part of the title, however, represents the hollowing out of one's soul. In other words, the person that is there physically is but a ghost of their own humanity. The person inside has long since passed and is now just a corpse being piloted by their own greed and selfishness. Alright, I think I'm beginning to get a little too pretentious for my own liking, so let's move on to our last stop of this short trip, Cemetery Window. This song is a perfect example of my earlier claim that more attention was brought towards writing the lyrics because there's just so much going on with this song.
She always looked at me through the cemetery window. She made a life of me, and it turned me off a feeling.
Now, I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what Cemetery Window represents, but we'll come back to that. As of right now, I think that in this verse, the speaker is telling us about a past lover. Either she moved too quickly in the relationship, or she became obsessive with the speaker in such a way that it soured the relationship. This next line, however, was where my understanding of the song seemed to hit a wall.
I couldn't realize that there always was a window, an ordinary window.
Thankfully, our friends over on Genius have once again swooped in to save my ass. One person theorizes that these lyrics are referencing a barrier of sorts in the relationship. The singer of the song, whose heart was broken, realizes after the fact that there had always been something separating the two of them. Metaphorically, it implies an imbalanced relationship. He was never able to get close enough to her, or vice versa. They could look, but couldn't touch each other. With that piece of the puzzle being found, I think my original interpretation was on the right track. I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. Anyways, I think the imbalanced relationship mentioned in that annotation is specifically that her speaker probably wasn't as committed to the relationship as the unnamed woman was. Whether it was because she was too clingy, or maybe because our narrator was too distant.
taught her spite to me, and I never even noticed. She tried to talk to me, but I didn't want to notice.
A key detail present in this verse is that our narrator was seemingly apprehensive when this woman wanted to open up the conversation about the problems with this relationship. As for the lines about her teaching spite to the narrator, I am not quite sure what that signifies. My best guess is that the narrator realized later on that this toxic trait was something he picked up from this woman, much like how he realized the relationship was never meant to be after the fact. Lastly, in the outro of the song, our narrator states,
Pains never make believe in paradise.
which signals us towards the final message of the song. That being, we should not ignore the problems in any relationship, even if it feels like paradise. To put it another way, even if there are good times in the relationship, it doesn't make it healthy to ignore the not-so-good aspects. To conclude this section, I think it is important to at least show some samples of songs that I didn't cover in depth, so I'll be sprinkling samples throughout this portion of the video as examples. Bars? To begin, let's talk about this experimental nature I keep bringing up, yet not elaborating on. The musical composition is mostly what I am referring to here, as the subject matter itself isn't exactly a departure from Red Vox's previous works, although, again, the lyrics do have a lot more depth than in Another Light. Going back to that Reddit post, the one about Stranded, written by Vinny, he states, "Going forward, we're going to be trying new things, both stripped down and more synth-heavy. As we can hear in this album, this is a departure from their previous works. Another Light and What Could Go Wrong both take elements of classic rock and modern alternative rock to give a unique yet familiar sound to their songs. Meanwhile, Kerosene tones down the electric guitar to make room for more acoustic guitar and synth. Further, the instruments don't take as much prominence as before, with a heavier emphasis on the lyrics themselves. Track 3, the album's namesake, is a good example of this, with very few instruments present in the song, allowing the lyrics to take center stage.
Never got around desire, never felt complete. Doused in oil and tried by fire, but never to be clean. Kerosene.
Never Gonna Win is an honorable mention, as well as another one of my favorite tracks from the album. I just didn't have time to cover it in depth.
Made a big sound, but you never had a reason. Oh, and you're never gonna win. No feeling low, the penalty of sin.
And this part towards the end of the song is so damn good. This is a major part of why I think this album was so important for Red Vox. They were able to focus more on improving their lyrics, particularly in terms of the richness of the narratives, rather than just overall improvements with the songwriting. Further, it showed the band could take risks to expand their creativity. In keeping with the lessons learned in Settle for Less, Red Vox wasn't chasing success here. The band was focused on making music they were proud of, and that's another key aspect of the band that made their music mean so much to me. Overall, Kerosene is, to me, a great album not because I love it, but because I respect it for what it represents. In this way, Kerosene really paid off for Red Vox, judging by their future releases, which we will cover in a minute. If you found yourself having overlooked Kerosene like I did, give it another listen. Trust me, it's worth it. Released in 2020, Realign came out at a difficult time. I won't bore you all with the details, mainly because many of us are already familiar with its significance, but in summary, 2020 marked the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Notably, educational institutions and public areas were partially or fully closed in many jurisdictions, and many events were canceled or postponed during 2020 and 2021. This context is important to note as we go over this album, as the COVID lockdowns occurring at the same time had significant effects on the mental health of many. That and the album had to have been in production during these lockdowns. Lastly, the band is no stranger to writing songs about mental health struggles, so even if said struggles were not directly related to the COVID era, I doubt the lockdowns made them any better. Okay, enough of that. Let's keep listening to their music. We begin with Realign, an optimistic song that has a relatively new sound that we're not used to hearing on Red Vox.
On my own, on my time, all I'm leaving is a past behind. For my soul, for my mind, all I need is what I'm yet to find.
Immediately, we get an idea as to what the song might be about. Our narrator needs to leave a past behind, or he's moving on with a new direction in life, alluded to by the title, Realign.
And I know you never pulled my arm, believe you me. But the only way to do no harm is to leave.
One way this could be interpreted is leaving a relationship from the point of view of the narrator. This seems to be a difficult decision for him to make, yet him leaving would make them both better off in his eyes.
How hard is it to keep in mind that life isn't ending?
Making decisions like this is a scary process, and it may feel like the end of an era is just that, the end. However, our narrator's life goes on, and this is just the start of what is hopefully a brighter future.
Off the phone, off the line, there's a better way to spend our time.
I think this lyric is symbolic of severing the ties he had with this person. He's finally hanging up the phone on this relationship because he is wasting his time by being in a relationship that just isn't working out. This song is then followed by Why Can't This Be Easy, which could be interpreted as a continuation of the narrator's journey that he began in the previous song.
Tell me, why can't this be easy? I've heard it once, I've heard it all before. So settle down, relax yourself completely. You can't get down if you're always in control.
Potentially due to some anxiety he's experiencing about having to reorient his life's direction, he wants to control every aspect of his life so it goes the way he wants to. But he can't get down, which I think this means calm down or be at peace, until he accepts that there are a lot of aspects of his life that he cannot control. And the same goes for all of us.
So if you're wondering how you walk away, you bide your time and wait just like you do.
Broadly, this journey involves a lot of waiting. When dealing with something like the death of a loved one or a breakup, making peace with it takes time. What you do at that time is important. This can also be applied to anything stressful in our lives. That job interview or a call from the doctor. All of this makes us anxious, yet we can't control all the variables.
Tell me, why can't this be easy? You cry for help, but there's no one at the
In the last verse, the speaker is telling us that to have an easy life will result in a lack of direction, a lack of purpose. Additionally, control isn't always a bad thing. We ultimately need to control ourselves to avoid the path of self-destruction, be it from addiction, toxic traits, or overall bad habits. In keeping with that relationship angle, we can deduce that this could represent our narrator working on himself to become a better person than he once was. It's easy to fall back on your old behaviors and ignore any teachable moments from the failings of a previous relationship. However, history will just repeat itself again and again if you keep going down this path. It's hard, but it will be worth it in the end. Due to how long this video has gotten, I'm gonna skip the next two songs, Reeling from the Rafters and The Reason This Is Happening. But like with all the songs featured, and not featured, in this video, I highly recommend you go give them a listen because they're great. Anyways, that then brings us to Apathetic Empathy, the fifth track on this album, which is another absolute banger of a song. You know the drill, so let's just get started.
Well, I could try my best to help, but I don't know you. And there's only so much difference it could make. I could try my best to save you, but I'm way down. If I push it any farther, I might sink.
On the surface, this song appears to be about someone that the narrator does not know well enough to effectively help them with some mental health struggle. Further, he emphasizes that he has to take care of his own mental health, and he could end up hurting himself if he does too much. I don't think that he literally doesn't know them, rather that something in the relationship, be it platonic or romantic, kept them from getting close. Again, this seems straightforward. He clearly cares enough that seeing them struggle hurts him. Additionally, he points out that this is happening around the world, and some people, quote, go too far. This could mean a number of things, including self-harm, suicide, addiction, or other self-destructive habits, or even taking out one's pain on others. He does, however, want to remind this person that life can get better, and that it's not too late to try again.
If you need someone, you have to want to change.
This lyric tells me that the narrator also recognizes that he cannot be the one that makes them change. Additionally, it could mean that if you want to be in love with someone, you have to be willing to make yourself a better person. In this way, this person might not be putting in the effort they need to in terms of their own well-being. Maybe they're just inconsolable, thus our narrator literally cannot help them. A reminder that, while our loved ones can be of great help, we cannot expect them to be our superheroes. We must therefore help ourselves, in addition to, of course, the support of others.
I could play that part and put it on my shoulder, but I do not have the discipline it takes.
Just a quick note, while I'm recording this, I am thinking that maybe that line is our narrator admitting that, well, he doesn't have the discipline it takes to be their partner or to essentially help them with their mental health struggle. By that I mean, he is recognizing that this person is just frustratingly inconsolable, as we've explored already in the song. And that maybe he's like, okay, I don't have the discipline it takes to, be a helpful friend here. And he's basically saying, I understand, or I guess I empathize with you, but, you got to help yourself, my friend. That's kind of what I'm thinking at this stage. Again, let me know what you think in the comments.
There always was a way out. You knew me all along.
When we help ourselves, the door to a brighter future becomes visible. In fact, once we see the door, we wonder how we kept missing it. When you are far away, though, it's hard to find the exit, yet you still know it's there. It is up to you to locate that door. Track 6 on this album is Be Someone Forever, which I've been excited to cover. This whole album honestly has been really fun for me to analyze, and this song in particular took the cake, mainly because it just kept throwing me in different directions.
Don't you wanna be someone forever, forever? You can let them see you all the time. Don't you wanna be a great pretender?
To start off, I already started going back and forth with my ideas as to what this part of the song could mean. First, I was looking at it in terms of the relationship that I assumed a few of the songs were about. However, I honestly think I may have been overthinking it. So let's reel it in a little bit. Maybe from the rafters, her, right? So let's reel it in a little bit and get a fresh look. In my opinion, this might be about how people on social media tend to only show the good parts of their lives. Considering the time in which this album was released, this makes sense, since it wouldn't be hard to believe that people were spending much more time on social media.
Did you ever feel afraid? Did you ever feel ashamed? Did you ever feel the pain? Did you ever feel it? Did you ever rearrange? Did you ever need to change? Did you ever feel the same? Did you ever feel it?
Going with this interpretation, this verse could be the narrator asking this group of people if their lives really are as perfect as they make it out to be. I think what's especially important is when he asks if they ever rearranged. Posts that represent a part of you that you don't want shared with the world can be deleted to disguise yourself as a good person. Thus, one could make themselves look like they never had a past that they are not proud of if they just scrub all the remnants of its existence. This next line would then provide further evidence toward this claim.
Don't you wanna seem like you're divine?
What is currently holding up is this verse.
I don't know what you want from me, what you're looking for, what I'm supposed to be. Maybe I just don't wanna see what I mean to you, what you mean to me.
This is why I originally thought this could have been directed towards an ex-partner from the POV of the narrator. It seems to imply that he's really singing about someone who is sending him mixed signals in the relationship, which brings me back to this lyric.
Don't you wanna be a great pretender?
Going with this alternate interpretation, our narrator could instead be talking about how this person is just pretending to like him. Further, this lyric,
Did you ever feel the same? Did you ever feel it?
could be the speaker asking them if they ever had the same feelings that he did about them. Finally, circling back to this verse,
I don't know what you
he then doesn't know what to do about the relationship. He doesn't know what this person wants him to do for them to be happy, what I'm supposed to be. Further, he thinks he may be afraid of confronting them about this because he doesn't want to see what he means to the lover, what the lover means to him. This is another example of a song that has stumped me in terms of how I want to think about it, but I'm leaning more towards the relationship angle since there's just more evidence within the song to back it up. The social media angle just doesn't hold much weight to it, especially in the last verse. I just wanted to present both of them as a framework for something more substantial. You know the drill. If you got more solid ideas, let me know in the comments. Interjecting again here while recording this, I'm thinking with the social media angle, this still works. When he says, I don't know what you want from me, what you're looking for, what I'm supposed to be, would signify kind of like, I mean, thinking about this from the perspective of the lead writer, Vinny, he is also a content creator. And unfortunately, especially around this time, you'd see a lot of people, quote unquote, canceling others for things that they deemed immoral or just bad in some arbitrary measure of bad and good. And essentially he's going with the social media angle, he's posing the question of like, okay, what do you want from me? What do you guys want me to be? Do you want me to be this like perfect person, which he can never be because he's a person and people are never going to be perfect. That's just a fact of life. Do you want me to, be myself, even if it sometimes offends you? Things like that. And then, of course, did you ever feel the same? Did you ever feel it? I'm thinking, well, it's basically him asking these people again on social media who are basically covering up the not so great parts of their life. And he's basically asking, if you really are a person, did you ever feel these, important parts, very common parts of the human experience? Did you ever feel it? Because it's, from social media, you can make it look like they've never had that happen. They're basically presenting themselves as some kind of like perfect, like flawless character, almost like they're in a movie, but basically that's my thoughts on that social media angle that I just didn't include in the script. So hopefully that clears some things up. I'm gonna skip over track 7, Ozymandias, because I really don't have much to say about it, and again, this video is getting pretty long. I do still think the song is a great listen for the synth and the cool effects that were put on Vinny's vocals. That and the lyrics are very poetic. Overall, a fantastic song that I hope you all check out. In a similar vein, I am also going to skip track 8, Far Away. I just don't have that much to say about it, but I did want to mention it, and I hope you listen to that one as well. This leads us to the 9th song in the album, Return the Call. Once I got to analyzing the song, Be Someone Forever seemed like a cakewalk in comparison. I kept getting hung up on my impression that this song was somehow also related to relationship struggles, which led me to finding numerous roadblocks within each verse. So to reorient myself, I tried to see if there was anyone online that took a crack at it. This, once again, led me to Genius, where this person had this to say. Return the Call is a song about stagnation of progress by the human race. The song posits that if we were getting an extraterrestrial call, we wouldn't answer it anyways because we've lost collective interest in the universe in favor of celebrity culture and territorial conflict. This, to me, makes much more sense, and I'm happy this person had posted this because I didn't want to present yet another half-baked analysis. With this in mind, let's take a listen.
You know they won't be needed to return the call if they're already gone. The lead to be receiving could be too far gone. They're spiteful and withdrawn.
Starting off, our narrator's opinion is very forthcoming. The people in question are not needed to return the call because they're already preoccupied with other activities. As we will see, these activities are frivolous in his view. Further, he believes that many of these people are doing this because they might lack direction in their lives. Maybe they're too depressed about the world they live in, so they focus on aspects of society that they can control. Maybe they just have a life that is too mundane and so occupy themselves with activities that are not productive. To add importance to this problem, our speaker also claims that they are actually harmful to society, consuming and depleting everything around. To me, this is a criticism of consumerism in our modern era. As a human race, we are depleting our natural resources for trinkets and devices that are ultimately unnecessary. Another angle to view this is with the overconsumption of content on social media, especially from those who just parrot the talking points of others, repost something, and then move on to the next big thing. They move on so easily because they are never satisfied, always wanting more to post about. More creators to call out for, objectively, not so great stuff they may have done long ago, not recognizing that people can change. More people to rage bait. More people to get in a moral pissing contest with. Lastly, they are content to look behind, meaning that even when they're given a way out of this destructive pastime, they won't do it. Calling back to be someone forever, there always was a way out, they knew it all along. To change this toxic culture present on social media, they must have a desire to change, and they know this. Similarly, in Return the Call, the narrator says,
It wouldn't be impossible to save themselves if only they were trying.
This last line reminds us that if we put in the effort to make our world a better place and focus on taking care of each other, we could solve a lot more problems. Until then, humanity will keep eating itself, allowing the oppressive systems in place to keep getting worse. Our narrator is specific with his word choice as well, saying save themselves rather than stop themselves. This path that humanity is going down is ultimately harmful in the speaker's view, and to keep the human race from destroying itself, change must, therefore, take place. In keeping with this overall topic of the destructive nature of society at large, I Don't Mean to Complain contains a subject matter that is not dissimilar to Atom Bomb, specifically with its themes of social division in politics and the weaponization of fear by the mass media. Starting off strong, the speaker claims that some mysterious force wants us to be afraid of everyone, and that they want you to feel that way for good. This force, or forces, could be politicians keeping social division to maintain power, the mass media weaponizing fear to keep us engaged, or even followers of the political establishment. In my opinion, I think it's a combination of all three of these factors, and possibly even more.
Started to wonder if your life was a lie, but who really cares when everything is on fire?
In this context, I think these lyrics are representative of someone who may have been in line with this division, either passively or actively. Thus, when their morals are called into question, due to them being based on this us versus them ideology, it feels like their life's virtues were a farce. At the same time, many don't have time for that because every single minute there's a new tragedy happening. Who really cares when everything is on fire?
Some are indifferent, and some in denial. It's hard to complain, but you try for a while.
Additionally, this is telling us that some people try to ignore the fact that they are being fed propaganda by the mass media or the people they follow, thus being complacent. Either that, or they don't want to believe it because then their life would be, quote, a lie, and their entire world falls apart. Also, bringing up these issues will, inevitably, rustle some feathers, which makes it hard to speak the truth about how things are going. Some may boil it down to you just complaining, but you have to take it in stride. It doesn't matter if it makes some noise, the truth must always be stated. You need to try for a while. Lastly, to give it a more solid connection to Atom Bomb, I want to point out where these two songs differ. Where Atom Bomb had more of a defeatist narrative, I Don't Mean to Complain takes a more active approach to the issue at hand. In this way, we can think of it as a new perspective gained by our narrator, in which he now recognizes that these problems won't just disappear if he doesn't at least do something about it. In Atom Bomb, however, he gives up, stating, "I got an invitation to the renovation, but nothing gets done." I want to point this out mainly because it shows how Red Vox's music has evolved alongside their own experiences, giving even more weight to my earlier claim that Red Vox's music is very personal to them. Next, I'm going to give Anesthesia a brief mention because it is a fantastic portrayal of that lethargic feeling folks with depression get when they're in a really bad place or disassociating. Plus, it's got more great synth work. If either of these seem interesting to you, go give it a listen. Do it! Right now! Do it!
I feel the bitter of the cold, feeling better on the outside.
Better on the Outside picks back up with the relationship story, as I'm calling it. At this point, it's not clear what the speaker means by feeling better on the outside. We can guess that it probably means he's starting to visibly get better, possibly in terms of personal issues he outlined previously in the album. Yet, on the inside, he's still fighting these demons. Once again, I get the impression that the speaker is directing this towards someone that he previously had some kind of relationship with. Almost like he's saying this to them to make amends with their past.
'Cause there's no stopping you and me. We need a new horizon that we work to reach. Gotta make amends what we used to be.
My suspicions were confirmed with these lines that seem to be ending with an optimistic note. Our narrator recognizes that their past cannot be changed, however, their future can. Be it as friends or as lovers, they can hopefully forgive each other, try again, and maintain a better relationship. Another song that I don't have too much to say about considering it is much more straightforward in terms of its writing. It will, however, be important in our later discussion about this album as a whole, so it deserved a bit of a spotlight in this section. Originally, I was also going to gloss over Closer Now because I thought it only served to bridge the gap between Better on the Outside and Pale Blue Dot, the album's final track. After giving its lyrics another read, however, I realized there's much more going on than I originally thought.
We had a bit of a fall on the way down. You feel hit by a car and you're guilty. We had a little bit more than a breakdown. And now you're walking along in a daydream.
To begin, I think the song is still in keeping with the relationship angle, from the point of view of the narrator himself, and directed towards his ex-lover, I am assuming. He starts off by recognizing the falling out that he and this unnamed person had, ending the verse by saying that this person is, quote, walking along in a daydream. As we will see, this probably means that the other person doesn't have a realistic point of view about the whole ordeal.
It's just a little bit closer now. Oh, now. It's all a little bit harder now.
These lines could then mean that, as things are progressing, our narrator is realizing that it is getting harder to keep this relationship with them, be it romantic or platonic, due to their very different impressions about what happened, as well as their individual aspirations.
Want a piece of the world with your ice cream. Gonna be number one in a letdown where everything's moving on, but you're still holding.
Now, I want to say that the first line showcases Red Vox's insane writing skills, courtesy of Vinny, since he is the lead writer. I never noticed that line before when listening to the song, and now that I have, I think I'm going to be quoting that one from now on. Fangirling aside, I think the narrator is telling this person that they are both wanting too much and that they are stuck in the past. In this way, it might mean that this person wants the relationship to return to the way it used to. However, that will never happen. The narrator has changed and grown from their past. This song would then be our narrator saying that they must do the same in order to wake up from this, quote, daydream. The final track, Pale Blue Dot, wraps up this album with what is, in my opinion, a very spiritual song about humanity as a whole. Also, as a side note, the intro reminds me of a song you might hear in the game Firewatch, which is just one aspect of the song's instrumental that I love.
Out in the dark, a lone speck of light. All our creation, if we're the only thing that matters, then all we'll leave behind, this little dot you'd barely find.
To me, this brings us back to the primary message found in Return the Call. This, however, brings it further to ponder about the human race's place in the universe. If we really are alone in the space, then we are but a speck in what is a seemingly endless expanse of galaxies.
We barely crawl, we try to fly. They're all still children, no two the same, yet all alike. We are worth saving, we are the only thing that matters. Inside our little minds, we are the ones we leave behind.
This, however, does not mean that we are insignificant, especially to one another. In fact, we should be impressed that out of all the possibilities, we are here on planet Earth. Therefore, we must take care of each other. Nowadays, with tensions between different countries, it feels like the powers that be will pick and choose who is, quote, worth saving, which will only destroy us in the end.
We need a reason we should matter. And if we use our heads, we'll leave the lights on after bed.
In a callback to Return the Call, we must find ways to preserve the legacy of the human race. This could mean many things, including creating art or preserving our own heritage. We want to ensure that others passing by on the street know that someone was once here. In keeping with the lessons taught in Return the Call, we cannot keep killing each other to get more land or make a handful of people have insane power.
You are the moonlight on a mountain. You are a wave upon the sea. You picked a time that really matters. Don't fuck it up for you and me.
Relating to the overall message of the song, I interpret this verse as our narrator telling us, the listener, that we are at a unique point in history. We have incredible access to the internet, easily connecting us with nearly anybody in the world, and allowing more people than ever to learn about our works. Therefore, our narrator urges us to use this opportunity to its full potential, and try to make the world a better place. rather than use online platforms for trivial pursuits such as celebrity culture or bland consumerism. Thus, this time, quote, really matters because we need more people who look out for their fellow man, rather than attack him or ostracize him for being different. In short, this song is telling us that we need to change the course of humanity and replace our culture of social division with one of unity. Also, we must keep valuing the art that we produce, as it is one way in which we can ensure that we have a lasting impact in our world. To wrap this section up, I think that, overall, this album represents a statement of philosophy from Vinny, the band's primary songwriter. I say this as a longtime viewer of Vinny's Twitch streams where he has alluded to this disdain for many aspects of social media. Recently, he brought up one example of this in the intro for the stream of the game Eugenics. For the most part, he recognized that while people are allowed to dislike certain things, he felt that this activism was misguided, to say the least. Additionally, he echoes the messaging of Pale Blue Dot by saying,
There's some problematic meows in the game, which is fucking insane to say when the crazy shit that's happening in the world. We're finding out that shit is actually insane up top. And people are worried about problematic meows. You people need to take a vacation and relax and reprioritize. And there are people in that game that I can't say I'm proud to share a meow with, but I also don't like existing on this planet with lots of different types of people. And so we get over it. I'm on a platform with people I don't particularly care for. We move on. We get over it. It's okay.
I think this helps clarify what our narrator, who I think is primarily Vinny in this case, is trying to communicate with us in tracks 6, 9, and 14. He is not saying that we have to all be friends with each other and always get along 100% of the time. He is, however, saying that the way humanity is going, we will end up destroying ourselves if we don't focus on the major problems present in today's society. Things like helping developing countries receive adequate utilities and healthcare, or pressuring politicians to take a more humanitarian approach towards conflict with other countries, or even just being active members of our communities. You know, the important stuff. Okay, this is where my opinionated part of this video comes in full swing because I resonate with the messaging of these songs in a very deep way. I share Vinny's disdain for social media's toxic culture, as well as his ideology that we need to stop hating each other for very silly things. Although one may argue that there are some positive impacts from stopping somebody from playing a certain game featuring people they deem, quote, problematic, or not wanting people to dress a certain way, it is ultimately unproductive to get in arguments with people over this. Further, it doesn't do much to urge others to stop playing a game or watching a content creator because they don't like them. The root causes of those problematic opinions that someone may have are what needs to be fought. In short, we're winning these battles, but we're losing the war. Okay, sorry for that long rant, but it's something that has bothered me for a while, and I needed to get it off my chesticles. To refocus, I do want to talk about Realign, Why Can't This Be Easy, and Apathetic Empathy, because their subject matter differs from the others I just talked about. If you recall, I claimed that one interpretation of these songs is that they are about moving on from a relationship, or some hardship in life. Overall, I stand by these interpretations because they make sense to me. However, to be thorough, I wanted to take a look at what others had to say about them. And I cannot believe I am saying this, but the third Poop Lord over on Genius appears to corroborate what I had to say about track 1, especially with the chorus. The author states, either to us or his now former significant other, that from this point on, he's going his own way, at his own pace. Opening the song with this statement suggests that things are bad enough to warrant immediate action. Similarly, in the song bio for Why Can't This Be Easy, Mini Shrike suggests that the song is about Vinny's character, or the narrator struggling to get himself through things without needing to feel fully in control, which is also similar to how I interpreted it. Same goes for Apathetic Empathy. This tells us that the second narrative thread present in the album is about moving on from bad relationships, and the lessons he's learned from those, in addition to the speaker's overall thoughts about the world through his now older eyes. More broadly, I think Realign is mostly a collection of thoughts about Vinny's life philosophy, as well as reflections on his past and what he's learned from all this. Then, the album caps it all off with a unique song about how he views humanity at large, and an optimistic message about how we all are unique people that need to put our talents to good use. In this way, I don't necessarily think that the album is about one continuous story. Rather, it's an album that allows Red Vox to speak their mind about topics that are important and very personal to them. Lastly, I want to cap off this section by giving this album praise because it embodies exactly how far Red Vox has come from their humble beginnings with What Could Go Wrong. Embracing their experimental nature they tapped into with Kerosene, it resulted in an album that not only sounds amazing to me, but also communicates some very important messages about how we, as a society, can make the world a better place. Sprinkle in a few songs about the lessons to be learned from leaving a toxic, or otherwise bad, relationship, and you get Realign, what is possibly the best Red Vox album to date. Based on the list of Red Vox's releases, these two are really separate albums. However, looking at the description for Afterthoughts, they are meant to go hand in hand. Thus, I will be treating them both as one for this section while still recognizing that they were released on two different dates. Now, for this section, we are going to tone down the analysis quite a bit. Although I still think these songs have really deep meanings to them, much like the others, some of the themes present were already touched upon in this video. That and the primary reason I love these songs are for the sound. Beginning with the 2022 release Visions, the songs take a more grungy feel, which is a guilty pleasure of mine. I mean, I know that Best of You by the Foo Fighters gets clowned on, but I honestly like that song. Similarly, Choking on the Spite is one of my favorite songs on Visions. The track is very busy, with lots of loud instruments just punching you right in the face from the start. It does a great job at portraying the emotion of the song with the instrumental alone. Once again, we have lyrics that are pretty straightforward. This is about a possibly messy breakup where the narrator seems to be promising, what I assume to be, his ex-lover, that they will never be, quote, alright because of some kind of, quote, spite she holds towards him. I think this ex-lover is probably being stubborn about something that happened, or was said, so the narrator maintains that they cannot be on good terms if she keeps holding this grudge. Another song containing a similar amount of energy is There's a Place. This is one exception to my earlier statement about analyzing this album because it's just too interesting to pass up.
Open your eyes to the feeling you deny. Suffocate with a smile and then add it to the pile. I could live forever, but where would I go? There's a place for every time you're alone.
I honestly can't say how much I love this song without repeating myself, so instead I want to focus on the lyrics, because they are rich with some kind of metaphor or commentary. At first, it seems like it's a creative take on the saying that there's a time and a place for certain things, primarily in response to someone doing or saying something that is inappropriate in that context. Think making a joke about being 6 feet under during a funeral. There's a time and a place for dark humor, but not during a time of mourning. At first, I went with this angle in a more literal sense, however, it just didn't make sense, so I took another look at the Brain website. Genius.
I can still remember the production notes. There's a place for every wry anecdote. I know you know.
Enfield 33 theorizes that this song is actually the narrator teaching us about his philosophy for coping with his anxious thoughts that he faces. For the most part, he wants us to face our problems head on and stay in the present. Additionally, when he says, "There's a place for every wry anecdote," Enfield 33 claims that this means he can still remember some of the notes on his own music, that there's a place for these notes, and that they haven't been forgotten, even if they seem meaningless in hindsight. I wanted to bring this up because it is an interesting aspect of any artist's music that I never recognized in this context before. I do recognize that Red Vox seems to improve their craft with each album release, thus they do reflect on their music in some way. I did not, however, think about how the stories behind them are something that never leaves their minds. Honestly, I feel a little dumb for not picking up on this earlier because these songs are, as I am claiming, very personal to them. It makes sense that the life lessons they learn from these past events, as well as the pain associated with them, doesn't just go away after the release of their music. In the context of the overarching narrative of the song, it's a reminder to all of us that the lessons we learn cannot be forgotten. Further, we shouldn't push away any anxieties that we deem, quote, insignificant, once again pulling from Enfield 33's annotations on this song.
There's a place for every cry from the cold, or every knife that you clove, or every mile that you drove, and every bump in the road. I know you know.
Additionally, in life, there is a destination for the hardships we may endure. Thus, we must keep pushing forward. Reversing our direction back to track 1 brings us to Visions and Afterthoughts. This is another song I want to highlight because it is, in my opinion, a fantastic start to the album. Something that I hadn't touched upon yet is how Realign and Another Light are albums that I enjoy listening to from start to finish, mainly because track 1 on those albums are some of my favorites. It's a similar deal with Visions and Afterthoughts. This isn't to say that I can't listen to albums such as What Could Go Wrong in a similar way. It's just that track 1 on that album, as well as track 1 on Kerosene, don't do a whole lot for me. Anyways, Visions and Afterthoughts is another one of my favorite songs, mainly because it is a return to form for the band, as is its respective album. The overall vibe of Visions is similar to Another Light and What Could Go Wrong in that it makes heavier use of the electric guitar and brings back that grunge-esque style.
Go too far with your visions and afterthoughts. Play your part and leave all the rest to us. Now you know what a mess you're in.
Like with the other songs I covered from this album, not much else to say about it, other than it's a really great listen if you're in the mood for a song about digging too deep into your reflections on past missteps, as well as what you think could go wrong in the future. Moving on to 2023's Afterthoughts, I think this album is my favorite of the two, mainly because it's more synth-heavy overall, in addition to making some overall improvements. Once again, Red Vox starts this album off with one of my favorite songs from the band, Eminence. I think my favorite part of the song is how well it showcases the idea of spending too much time thinking about the future. Something that I, unfortunately, do frequently. It's also a nice parallel to Visions and Afterthoughts, with both of them being the first tracks on their respective albums, as well as playing into similar themes. In the process of getting, quote, ahead, we end up just standing in the way of ourselves. As I stated before, it's good to prepare for the worst. However, when it comes to anxiety, it can be detrimental to our ability to take steps with some amount of risk if our way of preparation is avoidance. Track 2, Playing by the Rules, is a really fun song to listen to, despite the subject matter being anything but.
I've been playing by the rules and I just can't get out of bed. I can play it kinda cool, but I'm just like anyone else. So I've been playing by the rules, but I don't know who's control.
It's a great song about having to cope with depression, specifically getting at the, quote, rules we are expected to follow to live a normal life. In my opinion, these rules that the narrator is referencing could be the day-to-day activities we are expected to do, regardless of how we feel. It reminds me of all the times I've had to drag myself to work to teach math, even when my world feels like it's falling apart because, well, I've got a job to do. Additionally, our narrator is, quote, just like anyone else. He can pretend that he's dealing with it so well, yet it's as hard for him as it is for any other person. Moving on to a track that I also resonate with gives us Almost a Stranger, a song about the difficulty of being true to oneself.
I don't need a reason to find. I'm beginning to feel myself again. I'm leaving the memory behind, so I can finally be myself again. Auf Wiedersehen, I'll see you later some better day.
That last line, in my opinion, might be the narrator telling someone from his past, maybe the person that kept him from being his true self, that he is moving on with his life. When he says Auf Wiedersehen, which means goodbye in German, it implies that this person is not following him in this journey. This is the hardest part of being one's true self, because it is sometimes hard to say goodbye to those people.
Sign your own waiver, and you'll never be somebody else.
This line is pretty cut and dry. Essentially, the narrator is saying that if you hold yourself accountable, then you will always be yourself. In other words, you are the one standing in the way. A nice parallel to Eminence.
Almost a stranger, even to those that I know. I'm the remainder of memories thrown to the cold. Life is too painful when honesty comes at a price. Lies are fatal, unless they're the four-letter kind.
I think that the first line of this verse means that our narrator's tendency to hide so much of his personality makes him unable to get close to his friends and family. But being true to himself has a, quote, price. That being that if the ones he knows don't like this newly found honesty, they might not want to interact with him any longer. Again, it's very hard to be yourself when it could result in losing some friends along the way. However, it is worse to put on a facade just to keep a hollow friendship. Now that last line about, quote, lies not being fatal unless they're the four-letter kind is tripping me up here. I'm not exactly sure what he means by this. However, Lyolf over on Genius claims that it refers to the word love. Going with this theory, it could then mean that not only is a song more specifically about breaking up with someone who was holding the narrator back, it tells us that lying to a significant other about being in love is, quote, fatal. The word choice is metaphorical in the sense that our narrator probably killed his sense of self by staying in a relationship that he was seemingly afraid to get out of. At the same time, it was built on lies about how he feels, making it self-destructive for him to continue seeing this person. Thus, his, quote, honesty that this relationship was essentially meaningless comes at a price. This price might be the breaking of someone else's heart, or the uncomfortable situation he will inevitably step in when he has to come out as a liar to them. Up next is Forgetter, and I'll only give it a brief mention because I, again, do like the song, but I don't really have too much to say about it. I do, however, like the title being a combination of the words forget and her, giving us a hint as to what the song is communicating to us.
When it's too tough, the time is up. Forget it, forget it, forget it, it'll make you feel better.
It's a pretty good representation of how some people, myself included, tend to ignore the things that make us sad, using a past relationship as an example. And that's pretty much it for what I wanted to cover. So, to wrap up this section, I do want to reiterate that I really like Visions and Afterthoughts. However, I have to admit that they are not the best Red Vox albums in their discography. It's hard, because they came after Realign, and that album might be Red Vox's masterpiece in terms of how well it experimented with Red Vox's style to make songs that had a unique sound as well as a lot of depth. As such, I don't think they'll ever top that album. Red Vox, please prove me wrong someday. I think that Visions in particular is in an awkward place because it was released right after Realign, as well as taking 2 years to be released, making it really hard to not be a little disappointed with it when comparing the two. I think my biggest gripe with Visions is just that, as Kirby Master over on the Red Vox subreddit stated, there was something that was, quote, missing from this album to grasp my attention. It's hard for me to explain exactly why I feel Visions was lacking something to keep me coming back, but I think it is a combination of a few factors. One of which is the songwriting. Although songs like Choking on the Spite sounded good, it lacked that depth that was ever so prominent in Realign. It's not even that it retreads old ground in a narrative sense. By that I mean breakups and other love-related issues, which, as we know, was very common in all the songs that we covered. It's just that it doesn't have that much depth to the underlying narrative. I think a less direct writing style, or maybe even just a different construction for said narrative, possibly some metaphors or more unique wordplay, could have made the song really good. Unfortunately, the writing of the lyrics is just holding this song back. If this album had more songs written, like There's a Place, I don't think I'd have been disappointed with it. I recommend that you read that Reddit post I quoted, link is in my source citations document, in the description, as that person did a great job at articulating more of the technical aspects of the album at large, as well as all the factors that contributed to it being a disappointing album, in that person's view. I don't agree with every single thing in that post, but it is a very thoughtful explanation of the lessons to be learned with Visions. On the other hand, Afterthoughts was a little bit better. Again, I don't think Red Vox can ever top Realign. However, Afterthoughts implemented a lot more synth and unique writing that I felt was missing in Visions. In this way, I feel that Afterthoughts is somewhat of a redemption arc for Visions, taking the lessons learned from that album to make something that was significantly more memorable. Take Almost a Stranger, for instance. That one threw me for a loop just like some of these songs in Realign did. The lyrics are rich with similar metaphors that give a creative spin to a topic that Red Vox has explored a few times, that being, you guessed it, a difficult breakup. It's a similar deal with Forgetter. I feel like there's just a lot more going on than some of the songs in Visions. To conclude, I want to remind everyone that this isn't meant to be a hatred manifesto for Visions, far from it. Again, I still really like some of the songs on the album for just sounding really good to me. In a way, it's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. It just lacked a little bit of the depth that I was accustomed to with their previous releases, especially Realign and Another Light. Honestly, if that's the worst thing I can say about Red Vox's releases, then they must be doing a lot of stuff right. Plus, if my feelings about Afterthoughts didn't make it clear enough, I think Visions was just a bump in the road.
Sick reference, bro.
In the grand scheme of things. They learned from their mistakes and made better music as a result. In other words, Red Vox is good stuff. Sorry. Where this all brings us is Retcon, Red Vox's 7th album, and as of the writing of the script, their most recent one at that. Now, much like the previous section, I am not going to be analyzing this album in depth. This is because, in all honesty, I need more time with this album to give it a proper analysis, which is a similar deal with Visions and Afterthoughts. I may do a follow-up video in the future going more in depth with them, but for now, I'm just going to highlight my faves, just like in the previous section.
Can't believe I fucking said faves. Jesus Christ.
What I will say about Retcon is I think it further improves upon the shortcomings I feel are present in Visions by giving the songwriting more depth, as well as just having a nice overall sound to each of the songs. Particularly, it expands upon the ideas of memory that were only a small reoccurring thread in Another Light, a topic that I always find very interesting. On that note, let's talk about Remember, the second track on the album, and a great song all around.
Somewhere in your life, the wheels came off the ride. A splinter in your mind. Remember, even if you try, won't know the reason why. Such a waste of time, and time hasn't always been kind.
I like that this song showcases how Vinny's vocals have evolved over the years. His singing has become more dynamic, and I feel that he puts more confidence and emotion to the delivery of his lyrics. This isn't to say that this is the first Red Vox song where we're hearing this. Multiple songs in Realign and Visions are great examples of this. What it does showcase is just how much he's improved since Another Light. Although Vinny's vocals were still good in that album, they weren't as dynamic. Another great song on this album is The New Flesh. I think that song encapsulates exactly what I was hoping for in Visions. The synth comes back in full swing, with lyrics that give a fresh take on topics that were explored already, while also introducing enough new ones to give me reasons to keep coming back to this one.
Pieces are gone, meaning is lost. The time when it's too long, untie the tether, the safety's off.
Again, I need more time with this album, so I'm not going to go over in depth what I think the song means, but I do think it is overall a new spin on the idea of giving up your sense of self to be successful. It uses the idea of putting on, quote, new flesh to replace your old self with something you wish it could be. As an example of new topics, Real or Not has me covered. This song appears to be about how generative AI is slowly being used to replace art made by humans, particularly in how it replaces the aspect of human expression with something artificial, a cheap imitation of other works.
Whether it's real or not, as right as a broken clock, alive but doesn't bleed. It'll think but there's no feeling. Whether it's real or not, depends on what you want from the prompt.
Just so we're clear, I'm not saying AI bad, but it is important to recognize that just because it's impressive technology, it doesn't automatically mean that how it's being used is good. There is a whole other discussion that can be had about generative AI that is far beyond the scope of this video. However, to keep it brief, I am 1. Interpreting a song that was written by somebody who is not me, and 2, I, like many others, feel that with anything as powerful as some generative AI models, There needs to be balance and regulation. It shouldn't be outright banned, but it shouldn't be pushed into our society with reckless abandon like it is right now, at the time of this video's release, that is. And if you're still butthurt that I don't adore AI, then please just fucking go outside and talk to people in person. I think it would do you some good. Rant over, sorry. Before moving on to the last part of the section, I wanted to briefly highlight The Time It Slipped Away, Memory Loss, and Headed Underground. The first two I listed are awesome songs about two different aspects of getting older.
Spent a lot of time going nowhere, waited at the side of the stage. It's all news to me. Is something wrong with my memory? Can't turn back the time. I wouldn't think of it if I tried.
I think they both did a fantastic job at painting a picture of what it's like to reflect on your past, as well as becoming increasingly forgetful of said past. The third one is particularly important for me to highlight, mainly because it is another example about how Red Vox was able to put a fresh spin on topics they've already covered in previous albums.
Trees are turning brown, the days are shorter now, the days are shorter now. Holding on so well to a little of yourself, to a little of yourself.
This one being about seasonal depression, rather than overall feelings of depression or depressive tendencies. All great listens that I hope you folks check out. And now, we reach the last song I wanted to talk about on this album. Up to this point, I had mostly discussed topics that I was very comfortable talking about openly, as they were more so tied to my personal philosophy or just my struggles that I could talk about in a more general sense. This next song, however, gets at something much more sensitive and specific, as well as painful for me. And despite how difficult it is for me to even bring this up, it is one of the main forces driving me to make this video. I want to be clear to you all, this part of the video will be talking about some heavy stuff, and it does not have a happy ending. This is your last warning about the content of this video. Seriously, if anything involving suicide or self-harm seriously distresses you, feel free to sit this part out until you're ready. I was originally debating if I would even talk about this in the video at all, but I think it will help paint the complete picture as to how Red Vox's music has helped me through the dark times in my life. Okay, I think I'm ready, but first, let's set the scene. It was a cold day in early January. I believe it was 2018. I was sitting on my bed, waiting to leave for work. I worked at a grocery store, and this day was a unique one. Inventory. I was honestly excited for this shift. My work would pay time and a half on Sundays, and in addition to that, I worked a double. One regular shift during normal hours, and then the inventory shift after the store closed. Considering the extra money I would make, as well as the opportunity to do so without having to deal with customers for the second shift, it was no surprise why I looked forward to this. At the same time, I could hear my dad talking on the phone with my aunt downstairs. From the sound of his voice, it wasn't good. However, I just assumed that my uncle had done something stupid for the billionth time. A few minutes later, I heard my dad going up the stairs, followed by a knock on my door, and the sight of his face in the doorway. Nothing could have prepared me for what he said next.
Your cousin passed away. It was suicide.
just how much time had gone. Living inside my head all day. I should have called you. I don't know what to say.
None of us in the family could have believed this would happen. And nothing I can say here could even come close to how this felt for us. Although Jay, as I'll be calling him from now on, got the label of cousin officially, he really was like a brother. And a friend to all of us. One of my siblings, I'll call him C, was especially affected by this, as was my other cousin, Jay's brother. As far as cousins go, C and Jay were very close. They basically grew up together. When visiting my grandparents on my dad's side, my aunt always joined us, as did Jay's brother, and they always hung out together. Jay was an incredibly kind and welcoming man. Much like his brother and mother, my aunt, he was very fun-loving, yet laid back. He brightened up the world with a smile, and always seemed excited to talk to me about what I'd been up to since I last saw him. Although our lives had to go on after his untimely departure from this world, him not being here makes it so much more difficult. The impact this had on my entire family feels impossible for me to put in words, despite my efforts. Jay's brother, sweet and gentle man, has been forever changed after his death, as was my aunt. The same goes for my brother, C. I do want you to all know that both me and my family are doing well. And although January is an incredibly difficult month for my family, we survived together. After his death, we strengthened our bonds in Jay's memory, and we all made efforts to look out for each other more often than we used to. The song Brother, track 6 on the album Retcon, communicates beautifully the pain of losing someone close to you. When I first listened to the song, I couldn't help but cry because it instantly reminded me of Jay.
Brother, I've been away too long. I didn't notice just how much time had gone. Living inside my head all day. I should have called you. I don't know what to say.
Starting off, our narrator realizes that it has been too long since he talked with his brother. Now, brother does not necessarily have to be a sibling. It could also be a very close friend or family member, much like how I felt about Jay. In my eyes, this song is about a person fitting that criteria that has since passed away. And in the narrator's process of grief, he is wishing that he did more to talk to this person.
People go and people come. I'll never forget you. Pieces left from everyone. I wanted to thank you.
Here, our narrator tells this person that he will honor their memory, as well as wanting to thank him for the impact they had on his life. It is still, however, incredibly difficult to come to terms with this. Although, quote, people go and people come, meaning that everyone experiences something similar, the death of a loved one is still incredibly difficult to process, which is why it can sometimes take years for some to move on. Lastly, when he says pieces left from everyone, I think the speaker is referring to the impact this person had on the lives of their loved ones, as well as the stories those people may tell about them, much like my memories of Jay's smile and friendly attitude. The song concludes with a message to the listener: never wait too long. In this way, our narrator wants to remind us to check in with our loved ones, especially those that you haven't talked to in a while. Additionally, if you are in a very rough spot, please reach out to others. Although we are a wave upon the sea, we are worth saving. We love you, Jay, and we miss you. I hope that we see you again one day. Till then, our hearts ache as we go on with our daily lives. Before concluding, I want to thank those who stuck around for that last portion. It was incredibly tough for me to write, and just having you listen it means the world to me. Now, so we don't end on a sad note, let's wrap up this video with my overall thoughts about Red Vox. To me, Red Vox is representative of a band that has the importance of their art at the forefront. They are not concerned with making their music appeal to the masses or to cater to someone else's idea of what their music should be. It's what they want it to be, and it says what it needs to say. Those are the two most important aspects of any artist to me, and it's why Red Vox has to be one of my favorite bands of all time. They experiment with the sound, composition, and writing of their music with each new release. Whether this is as a creative exercise to help improve their musical ability, or just a way for them to keep things fresh, what matters to me is that it keeps me invested. I never know what to expect from each new release, but I know it's going to be interesting. Could be more synth-heavy, like Kerosene and Realign, or it could take on a more grungy sound, like with Visions. Their focus on variety makes me hungry for more, and excited to hear what they want to try next. In terms of writing itself, they never shy away from making it personal, which is in line with their consistent approach towards making their music what they want it to be. Vinny, being an English major, as he has stated on multiple streams in the past, uses unique metaphors that make the songs not just fun to analyze, but also rich in ways that one might interpret it. Another important artistic choice that I hadn't fully addressed was that Red Vox chooses not to divulge their, quote, stories behind their songs, much like Vinny stated during the premiere for Another Light. In my opinion, this is what makes Red Vox approachable for me. Not knowing exactly what the artist is intending is something that I find keeps it engaging for me for years to come. With each new listener comes a different perspective on what it could mean, and even if that opens the door to those who might misinterpret it, something that I am well aware that I am not immune to. What this does do is allow the art to speak for itself, which is something that Red Vox's music does impressively well. Don't get me wrong, I think it's fun to hear from artists about what exactly their art means to them. However, it is just as fun to have to interpret someone's art for what it means to yourself. I've always enjoyed multimedia art projects such as the Oakburn Opus because of how much reading in between the lines and speculation one has to do to make sense of it, due to the artist's lack of explanation about the project's meaning. In that same vein, I love having to interpret music on my own, much like many others do. To tie it all together, it gives me a reason to interact with the art on a more personal level. Additionally, it keeps me coming back to it because I, inevitably, will change. Thus, my interpretations on pieces of art will change as well. Lastly, I love Red Vox simply for the reason the band exists. The band members found each other and united over one thing they all love: making music. And they have fun while doing it too. It is for these reasons, and possibly even more that I just don't have the time to articulate, that I love the band Red Vox, and I hope that this video encourages you to give them a listen, if you haven't already. Once again, the description of this video contains links to all the different ways you can listen to their music and support the band. Now, don't click off the video just yet. We still have that ranked list of my favorite Red Vox songs that I promised. Stay tuned. And now, it's finally time for me to rank my favorite Red Vox songs and albums. Now, keep in mind that these are, of course, my subjective opinions, like basically everything in this entire video. I am by no means saying that any other Red Vox songs not listed here are bad or anything like that. Just take this as a fun little extra and a peek into what I gravitate towards in terms of my musical preferences. Alright, let's not delay this any longer, and start with my favorite songs. Originally, I was gonna just list my top 5s, however, I had a lot of trouble listing only 5 of my all-time favorites, so instead I'm going with the top 10. Alright, at number 10 we have In the Garden. I think this song was a first 10 out of 10 for me when it came to Red Vox's writing and instrumentation. However, being an earlier song, they improved upon what made the song work in so many ways with their later works that I can't help but give it a lower spot. Number 9 is Cemetery Window. Other than having a really addicting melody, this song was great in my opinion because it was a departure from Red Vox's, at the time, established style in the best ways possible. It's a perfect encapsulation of why I think Red Vox's tendency to experiment with each new album works so well. At number 8, we've got Choking on the Spite, more so because it's a fun song to listen to for the same reasons that Best of You by the Foo Fighters is fun for me to listen to. It's got emotion, a busy composition that makes it just far enough to tickle my brain, and a melody that is fun to recite. Number 7 is Eminence. This one was tough because I love the synth in it. However, it's just slightly less of a fun listen than the rest on this list. And I had to put it somewhere. It's still a fantastic song, and it's got to be one of my favorites of all time. Number 6 is Pale Blue Dot, mainly just it's so spiritual, and how well it serves as a final track on Realign as well. Great song, but a little bit low energy for my tastes, so it also didn't quite make my top 5. Alright, getting into the top 5s. We'll start with 5. I chose Apathetic Empathy mainly for the message it portrays as well as the sound of the chorus. I really can't say much else about the song that I haven't already said. It's awesome. Number 4 is Brother. I think it ranks so highly not just because it's catchy, but also because of the subject matter. It talks about something that's very personal to me and really has been a huge help in my ongoing grieving process for my cousin. Unfortunately, the monkey's paw about this is also the subject matter being incredibly painful for me, so it's not a song that I can just listen to at any time like the others on the list. Number 3 is Stranded. This was not a surprise at all to me, considering that I love when space is used as a metaphor in songs. I think the story of the song is really good, and the guitar solo. Oh, the guitar solo. Especially considering that the song was made fairly early on in Red Vox's career, yet does so much. I can't help but put this song so high up on my list. Number 2 is Realign. Melody's fantastic, lyrics are so damn good, and it's a fantastic start to an amazing album. The song is possibly one of the most addicting for me of all the Red Vox songs. Alright, and now we have number 1. The one that surprised me the most is Be Someone Forever. This song wasn't my favorite before making this video, however, it really grew on me. So much so that I ended up enjoying this song just a lot. Of course, the lyrics are great, but the instrumental is just out of this world. Red Vox's best musical talent, especially with the synth, is presented in the song, and it's been stuck in my head for the majority of the time that I've been making this video. Alright, now let's quickly rank my top 5 albums so that this video doesn't go on for even longer than it should. Top 5 here just because Red Vox only has 7 studio albums. Sorry, Blood Bagel, you're an EP. But it'd be a lot harder for me to rank that many albums. Number 5 is Kerosene. This is surprising because in an earlier version of the script, I stated that this wasn't one of my favorites. However, I had a change of heart after giving it another listen. The reason why this isn't in my top 5 at all is because of its experimentation with Red Vox's style. It showed that Red Vox was capable of taking risks with their art and resulted in an album that is very special, even though I tend to overlook it. That and it has Cemetery Window on it, so it's like hard not to love this album at least a little. Plus, after going through this album for the video, I realized there were a lot more songs on this album that I liked than I originally thought. So, good job, Kerosene. All right, number 4 is Visions. Again, I like the grungy sound to this album. The sound is just so good. That's where it shines. And overall, it's got a good amount of songs on it that I like. But as stated earlier, I was slightly disappointed with the depth of the lyrics in this album, so it still ranks a little low on this list. Although I put a note of this in the video. I think that my judgment is being a little clouded just because like I had just come off of the high from Realign. Number 3 is Another Light, mainly because it's one example of an album that I love listening to from start to finish. Even the songs that I don't like as much are still great to listen to from time to time. I mean, like Reno, I really like, but it's one of the songs that I just, it's not on my liked songs in my Spotify playlist, but it's still one that I can get down to, It also marked an important advancement in Red Vox's career, particularly with the depth of their music, in addition to a more cohesive album overall. That, and it's just really impressive that they did so well for their second studio album. Hi, editing me, I forgot about number 2. Number 2 is Afterthoughts, mostly because of the synth, but also because it improved upon some of the shortcomings I saw with Visions. Alright, and my number 1 favorite Red Vox album is Realign. This is not surprising. It had all the depth of Another Light and Kerosene, combined with a more synth-heavy sound that, at the time, was just not present in their discography. It's unique, proved even more upon Red Vox's storytelling within the lyrics, and just overall had more polish. Alright, and that concludes my final section of the video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Alright, I hope you all enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. This project was the result of about 2 months of work, which is the longest I've spent consistently working on this video, on any video, I mean. And it really shows just because, like, oh my god, on the day I'm recording this, I put everything into Resolve, and I looked at the runtime, and I saw it was already over 2.5 hours, and I was like, oh my god. Way longer than I ever thought this was going to be. As stated multiple times, please feel free to let me know in the comments your thoughts on anything about the video. In the future, I hope to keep doing videos kind of like this. Although maybe not anything with as big as a scope as this project had, because this took a lot out of me. Anyways, but it's all from the heart, so I'm still happy that I made it come to fruition. I also wanted to use this section to recommend those of you who really enjoy Red Vox to support them by buying their merch, if you have the money, times are tough, or by buying their music through Bandcamp instead of just listening on streaming services. The reason why I say this is because unfortunately not all streaming services are as helpful to artists as they should be, hence why I recommend those who have the means to do so to support them in other ways. Again though, times are tough, so don't do it if you're strapped for cash. Save that for something important. But anyways, that brings us to the end of this very long video. If you liked it, then please hit the like button. I mean, if you're here already, I would hope you've already hit the like button. And be sure to subscribe, turn on all notifications so that you don't miss my next upload. Also, be sure to follow me on Substack, link in the description, like with everything else. There I plan to mostly post project updates as well as any extras that didn't make it into my videos. Anyways, take care, and I hope to see you in the next one.